record. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Alvin Guptina, Student Life and Leadership Manager at the Skyline College. I want to welcome everybody to our Black History Month panel, our closing panel. Let me share our thing real quick. Boom, that's what it is. So really want to give our thanks to our panelists for creating the time today to be with us, to share their story, and to also just be here. Y'all are super busy, and we're just so thankful just to have y'all in our space, just for this really great opportunity to share knowledge and just to kick it and to humanize each other as folks. So I really want to thank our panel. I also want to give a shout out to my team, Ryan, Sam, Elaine, who's our commissioner of activities, and all of our ASSC students, especially Anthony Tran, who's going to be our MC today, for helping create this amazing idea that we manifested into a thing, and that we really wanted to focus on, like the celebration of Black excellence on Skyline's campus, because we thought about, like, who could we bring in, but it's more like, who could we highlight that's already here, right? Because I feel like when we think about all these places in the world where we could bring in knowledge, it's like, yo, sometimes the knowledge is already here. So we really want to showcase what we have on our campus. And as I mentioned earlier, Anthony Tran will be our MC for today, but I want to throw it to Elaine, who is our commission activities, who will take us through some of our house rules. And just for everybody to know, this is going to be recorded. Once the panelists start, we want to ask if you could turn off your video just for the recording, and then you could turn it back on when we have the questions. And we are going to take a picture at 2:55. I just want to let y'all know that now, if you want to fix yourself now for that picture. I always tell people like a minute before, and then they can kind of get mad at me because they want to look good for the picture. So this is my warning to you now. 2:55, we're taking a picture. Okay, so I'm going to throw it to Elaine Arroyo.
For our house rules and important community agreements, I just want to mention that we shall approach with compassion, move with respect, and seek to understand. We shall also keep an alcohol, drug-free, and respectful virtual space. Show up with a community minded attitude, and welcome others with kindness and use supportive language. So we're here to listen to our panelist stories, and we want to make sure that everyone is present, engaged, and supportive of each other.
And this would be a good time for me to introduce our ASSC Center, who will also be our MC for today, Anthony Tran.
Hi, I'm Anthony Tran. Here we have first to our first to our virtual stage is Dr. Jennifer Taylor Mendoza. She currently serves as our Vice President of Instruction here at Skyline College. She holds a PhD in education from Claremont Graduate University, where her research focuses on the intrinsic resiliency of students of color and institutional approaches to addressing systemic structural inequities. On top of that, she serves as a lecturer at San Francisco State University. Next up is Pcyeta Stroud. She is the director of the Bay Area Entrepreneur Center of Skyline College. She has over 10 years of economic and workforce development experience. She is passionate about serving and enhancing the opportunities of Black and Brown communities. And she holds a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Arizona State University. On top of that, she also serves as the board president of the San Bruno Chamber of Commerce. If you've taken Math 200 here at Skyline College, you might be familiar with our next panelist. Professor Kenyatta Weathersby teaches elementary probability and statistics here at Skyline. My peers have personally told me of his amazing energy and how approachable he is, both in and out of the classroom. So there is no doubt he is one of Skyline College's most popular math professors. He has earned his master's degree in statistics from California State University, East Bay. Last but not least, as one of the newest members of the Skyline College family, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Chad Coates. He serves as the new Umoja. He serves as the new Umoja-ASTEP faculty coordinator at Skyline College. He holds a PhD in higher education administration from Bowling Green State University and has over 15 years of experience as a student services professional and educator. Chad has previously served as Associate Dean of Students and Dean of First-Year Students at Bowdoin College, Assistant Dean of Admissions and Advising in College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University, and Associate Director of the Learning Support Center at Long Island University. He also currently serves as an Academic Advising Director at Stanford University. For our first question, what is one educational barrier you had growing up, and how did you overcome it? Pcyeta, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Anthony. Hello, everyone. And I want to quickly thank ASSC, Alvin, Ryan, and your team for putting together a whole month of events and bringing us together and inviting me to be on the panel today. So this first question is a really good one, and it was, for me, a little challenging to really think about my barriers. Because I believe that I don't think I'm alone, but I do think that the barriers I faced in education were really internal. So I'm not the first in my family to go to college. I went to my grandmother's college graduation. I attended her graduation when I was 7. And I remember going to classes with my dad in the evening as he was trying to finish his degree. He was a community college student. And my brothers and I went to classes with him because he didn't have a babysitter. So I remember his doctoral graduation when he got his PhD. I was in high school, and my whole family came out to see him graduate from across the country, from across the state. So it was a huge deal. And my idea of education, of a college education, was really that it was a struggle. Like, this is something that is, it is meant to be hard, it is tough, and it is only meant for the most exceptional and driven of people. My dad is, of course, you say this about, your parents. My dad is super driven, and I feel like my grandmother is exceptional because she went to college with grandkids, and that's some amazing stuff. So my idea of college was not that it was this thing that everyone did. Very few of my family members went to college. So it was this thing that was meant for just the exceptional few people. And it wasn't something that seemed fun, or I felt like it was not for me. So that married with also being poor and all the other trappings, right, of barriers. I had a single parent upbringing with my dad, and we grew up in South Central Los Angeles in the 80s. So it was gang violence and drugs up and down the street. So those things, I think, all together, I had this idea that college I don't want to work that hard. It's too hard, and I'm not that exceptional. So the thing that changed that, believe it or not, was television. I saw a different world, and that was a TV show. I'm gonna date myself here. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was about college. And I saw for the first time a bunch of people that looked like me, different shades of Black folks, all going to college. And they weren't suffering and struggling. By and large, they were having a really good time, and they had fun, and they were fun people and funny, and they loved going to class. And so because of that TV show, I had a completely different idea of what it meant to be educated and to go to college. And that really helped me to overcome just that barrier of not thinking that it was something for me, and not really seeing anyone that looked like me have fun going to school, and believing that it was this awful struggle, and that you had to be the talented 10th in order to go to college. And I know today that college is for for most people. I believe that it's for everyone. And that's part of my life's work, is to demystify, you know, college, and to make it this thing that is for everyone that wants to do it. So I thank you, Different World. Thank you, 90s television, for giving me that reflection of myself. And I believe you have to see it to be it also. That's part of the reason why having a seat at the table is so extremely important, because I know the value of people that are following behind me that maybe want to see, need to see someone that looks like them in order to think that it's achievable and possible. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, Pcyeta. I think all students know how it feels to be like discouraged about going to college and feeling maybe like you aren't like the top, like the cream of the crop. And I think it's really important that everyone knows that college is really accessible for everyone, and that it's all about how you apply yourself and work hard. Are there any other panelists who would like to answer that question?
I guess Kenyatta, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay. So yeah, and thank you to the organizers of this event. This is very well appreciated. I would say maybe the only hurdle I ever had is I just felt like I didn't have a lot of mentorship, or I didn't have like proper advisors. So being on a college campus, I know how important that is. And so, you know, I was this kid that I was just really good at math. Like I couldn't do spell, but I couldn't do hardly anything. But I was just exceptional in math. I could do some math. But it wasn't until I got to college and I was sitting around, I was in the Black Student Union, we were just talking about life, and people were talking about math, and I was telling them, hold on, like, you know, I'm good at math too. And these two guys were like, well, we're actually mathematicians and we're studying math. Did you know you could study math? And I was like, study math? And they were saying, no, you could, like, the same way people study history and the same way people study English, you could study math that way. And I was like, what? And so I was like, well, show me what you know. And they said, hey, we'll show you everything. And they literally showed me how to become a mathematician. And so I just really felt like I could have been on that trajectory a long time ago, right? And so that's why I try to create real world situations and mentorships and interns, and anytime something crossed my desk, I like try to throw it at different students, because I think I could have got a little bit further earlier. Of course, everything in life happens the way it's going to happen, but I really wish, and I'm looking at that beautiful young daughter right there, but I think that I just wish somebody had recognized my talent and advised me earlier in life.
Thank you so much, Professor Weathersby. Chad, would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in real quick. For me, one of the challenges in starting college, so I started college a little older, closer to the age when folks are graduating college was when I started. So I started college around about 21. And the interesting thing for me, my parents hadn't gone to college, right? High school, that was pretty much it. I moved here from Jamaica, so starting this as a new immigrant, applied to school, got in. And when I said to my dad, I got into this college, he's like, you know, you're paying for that, right? And that was pretty much it, right? In terms of how to navigate this new space, that was also difficult. The one piece of advice my dad gave me that I thought was absolutely stupid at the time, he was like, well, I can't really help you, but just make sure you get all the information, because you can't make good decisions without sound information. And in that moment, I'm like, what's wrong with you? That means nothing, right? Because what do I do with that? But then in retrospect, you kind of realize as you're kind of navigating new spaces, that's exactly what you need. Figuring out where to get the information so that your decisions are informed, and finding people that can be your people, right? Have your back as you're figuring out new spaces. So that was a challenge for me and one that I think has driven me in such a way that I try to be that resource for students in every single college environment that I've been.
Thank you so much. For a second question, what is the foundational support or resources that has been crucial or vital to your overall success? Dr. Taylor Mendoza, would you like to answer that question?
Absolutely. And once again, thank you all. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, just brilliant students, and of course, Alvin and Ryan, for allowing us to come together and have all this collective wisdom. I was waiting to share because my resource, I can get into a little bit about my story through my resource. And so, like Pcyeta, I was raised in a single parent household, and my mother actually, I always like to talk about it in context to the book by Isabel Wilkerson, which is The Worth of Other Sons, which is the Great Migration for African Americans out of the South into, cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, things of that nature. And so my mother was the eldest of 9. And so at 18, she had gotten accepted into the University of Memphis, and she's brilliant, very, very smart. But I think the conditions in which she was living in, obviously, not only being the eldest, taking on all the responsibility, but also an extreme, oppression and just sort of what the South entails, that environment, the racism. She just got on the bus at 18, literally, with her best friend, my auntie, and went to California and landed in Inglewood, California. So literally Inglewood, California. And then of course, like everyone, her path was, not straight. It was happiness, hopelessness, sadness, triumph, things of that nature. And so for me, when I talk about my resource and when I talk about my story, one of the things I want to inspire students is that sometimes the path is not always straight. Sometimes it can be jagged. It can be filled with heartache, and it can be filled with hope. It can be filled with great love and sadness and loss. And so I like to share that. I have like over 20 something cousins. I mean, we have a huge family in the South when you have 9 siblings. And out of all of us, I'm the only one with a doctorate out of all of us. 2 of us have master's degrees, and everybody else, equivalent to maybe an associate's degree are nothing. And so my mom was really, really huge on education. And so I too, she went to El Camino College in Torrance. And so I grew up around El Camino College on the campus, running around, eating in the cafeteria, things of that nature, because I was so young at the time that she went back to school. Like Chad, she went back to school later on in life, and she became, she got her Associate of Science in Nursing. She became a registered nurse and worked at Kaiser in Hollywood for 23 years. And so she very much wanted for me to be, follow in her footsteps. She wanted me to be a doctor. And so I was very interested in other things, of course. I was interested in doing more spiritual ministry work. And so my claim to fame is my mom wanted me to be a doctor. I wanted to be a woman's ministry church leader. And so I got a PhD in education, right? And so I can still serve, and I can still help. But so a little bit about me. When I got to El Camino, though, like a lot of students, I was really lost. And so it took me, for my first 2 years, I successfully got D's, F's, and W's. And so what a lot of students don't know about me when they see me, because they see me so well polished, they don't know that I was kicked out of El Camino. I was actually academically dismissed. And so I like to show my transcripts, because I think people just don't believe me. But I was actually kicked out of El Camino. And I had to attend another community college and successfully show that I could actually complete some units. And so I went to LA Southwest, so the Los Angeles Community College District. I went to LA Southwest. I took English, I took another course. I proved myself to be successful. And then I, of course, enrolled back into my school, El Camino College. And so this was really challenging for my mom, because she had did a lot with my education. I say she experimented with me, because she would have me go to schools outside of my areas that I grew up in. So instead of going to school in Inglewood, I would go to school in Torrance, or instead of going to school in Lenox, which predominantly more Latinx, I would go to school in like El Segundo, Manhattan Beach. And so I would find myself being the only person of color. And we can talk about that a little later on. But so I finally got back to El Camino, and I proved that I could have units. And then of course I did really well. But the resource that really changed my life was a counselor. And his name is Kenneth Key, and he's still at El Camino. And I wrote about him in the Obligation Gap book that I co-authored. I also dedicated my dissertation. He was part of my acknowledgement. Because what he was able to do is show extreme care and provide me clear direction on what I needed to do. I had just gotten back to El Camino and I had to make an appointment with a counselor, and he was the first person that I saw. When I stepped into his office, he shut the door and he looked at me. He said, "What's going on with you?" He said, "You look normal. Why do you have these grades?" He said, "Why do you have these grades?" And I know that could be maybe off-putting to some people, but he showed really genuine care. And from that moment on, I was good. Not only did he help me with school, but he helped me get my life together when it came to like a job and a driver's license. So he was an amazing resource. And so what ended up happening, and I share this with students, I ended up being the youngest person in my PhD program. So I went from being in community college for 5 years to being now the youngest person in my PhD program. So I share that to tell you, don't ever give up. You fall, you get back up. When things, you think a path is supposed to be a certain way, you lose hope, don't lose hope. Have faith, you will get to where you're supposed to be. I love my journey. It was meant for me with all the challenges that I've experienced. And so always just remember that your journey is your own, nobody else's, and you have nothing to prove but only to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. You know, as a student, it was really inspiring just to hear that entire story, because it's easy to, I guess, feel discouraged when you fail a class or don't do as great as you can. But what really matters the most isn't failing, but like really just like getting back up, starting over, and like even if you continue to fail, it's all about just keeping that really strong mentality and just working hard until you finally succeed. Would anyone else like to add to that question? All right, so let's move on to our next question. When was your earliest memory of realizing your skin color mattered? Chad, would you like to answer that?
Oh, definitely. Thanks. So it's a little bit of context before I go into the answer for this. So I grew up in Jamaica, and for those of you who aren't familiar, predominantly Black folks. You literally have to go out of your way to see folks who are not Black if you live in Jamaica. Did all my high school, undergrad, high school, primary school, community college, and I worked there for a couple of years after community college work before moving to the States and going back to school. So in my mind, studying in the US, being in the US, it's the white people's country, right? So you expect to see white people everywhere. So you kind of prepared for that. So first year went by, I was similar to what Jennifer shared. Every single course that I took as an undergraduate, with the exception for about 4 in the entire 4 years of undergrad, I was the only Black person in the class, which kind of became the norm after first year. But however, in second year, in my sophomore year, I'd gotten a job on campus as a conference services coordinator. So most universities will rent out their dorms in the summer. And I was one of the students who administered, kind of ran that program with 2 other student leaders. So I remember one of the perks of the job, you got paid $15 an hour, which was a lot at the time. But the super perk was that you got to live on campus for free. So this was how I paid for housing. I got free housing because of this job. So I was able to move on campus. The cool thing with housing is that we ended up, all the coordinators, there were 3 of us as coordinators, because then we have a team of about 50 in the summer students, all students. So we got a room, which is a double room, but we don't have roommates. So that was part of the rule that the conference services office had. You know, we didn't have to have roommates because of the hours that we had to work. So I have my room in the dorm, King's Hall. And I was walking by the lobby in King's Hall, and I overheard a couple of guys having a conversation, and they're like, yo, you know, the black dude that lives in room 153, he's got a really cool setup, right? He doesn't have any roommate and he has a double. And I'm like, 153? I'm like, I'm the black dude. And it was in that moment that it occurred to me, right? And I promise you, I've been black all my life, right? Even beyond that point. But it was that was the first realization when something about that, overhearing that conversation clicked. And it's something that I've noticed mattered in every single circumstance that I've seen from that point to this point. So I still continue, even in my work life, my career, to be the only black person in the department. Cornell for 6 years, only black person in the department. Long Island University for 5 years, only black person in the department. Stanford, just started going on year 2, only black person in my advising director team. So it's interesting. So that was a point for me that was kind of like, your race really matters, right? So yeah, so that's kind of the first thing that came to my mind for that question.
Thank you so much. I think something that a lot of people don't really realize is that race is one of like the biggest factors in this, like how America's social construct and how people really relate to each other. And it's really unique to America. Our next question is going to be for Professor Weathersby. And everyone else can respond after that if they would like. But tell us about a time when you had to overcome struggle, one that you can look back on and recognize as resilience today.
Wow, like you asking a black man about overcoming struggle. So yeah, it's like, well, I know that, like I said, I graduated with my degree in mathematics. So I got a job at Kaiser Permanente. I started as an underwriter. And I've always been a hard worker. So I've always been the type of person where I have fun and I play, but when it comes to work, I work. So I worked and I moved up several $1,000s in salary, and I moved up salary to 2 other jobs real fast. Like within 3 years, I was a senior data analyst. Like I was this young kid that I was just doing my thing. And I got in this department. It was very high level, to the point where like when you write emails, your emails have to be like, if they had Grammarly back, I would have bought Grammarly, because it was like the emails had to be top notch, because all the data we went was to management. So long story short, they just did me wrong. Like people, it was just a lot, but they just would do me just really, really wrong, and always say that I did something wrong and the stuff I didn't do was up to par. So they basically, this was right around the recession in 2008. They like literally pushed me out. Like they forced me to leave without like firing me. It was like they got some corporate tactics. So here I am, I'm married, I don't have any income, my wife's not working. And so I went from there to being like a substitute teacher, like not a teacher, but like I'm talking about a substitute, like I'm talking the bottom of the barrel. I lost like 33% of my income. And it was just a tough time for me. But like as Jennifer said, being in the church, I'm a church going person. So, the church is always like, it's gonna be all right. Just keep your head up, just keep your eyes on the prize. So long story short, that year I came in, they had the thing called the high school exit exam. So they put me in a class, and these was the baddest, the wildest kids, but they all from the same neighborhood as me. So I'm like, I know your auntie, I know your mama, I know your daddy, like so long story short, every last one of them passed the high school exit exam. with me as their teacher. And I had 2 courses, and I'm talking about the wildest kids, but they're kids, right? And so, you know, I figured out how to talk to them and get to them. They hired me as a teacher the next year. I got pink slipped, and then they literally fired me after that. Like they pink slipped me. So the whole, I was, as Chad said, I'm the only Black faculty, like period. I'm the only Black faculty, let alone I'm in the math department. All the staff is like, what are you, the principal, they're saying, you're talking about diversity, but then you fire Weathersby. Like, that makes no sense. And so I'll never forget, I'm literally walking in the parking lot with my head down. And people who know me know I don't get down. I'm always chipper, but I'm literally just walking with my head down. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And there was there's a brother from my church who's like in the 9th grade, who I used to always go, his school is down, the school I work at is upstairs, the school he is at is downstairs. So I literally used to go downstairs and check on him every time. I'm his big cousin. They don't know we're not family, but I'm his big cousin, tell me everything. So they got to know me. And while I'm walking with my head down, the principal tells me, Weathersby, what are you doing next year? And so I'm like, man, I have no idea. I got pink slipped and this, that, and third. And he says, man, listen, he said, man, we would love to have you at our school. And I was like, what? He was like, man, you don't have to interview. You don't have to do a demo. He said, I know who you are. And he literally hired me. And do you know that man was not even the principal next year? He literally was leaving. Like, he was leaving, but he just hired me for the, and that's like how I became a teacher. That's literally how I became a teacher. And that, like I said, it was a tough time, because when you're dealing with people money, then that's a different, you could discriminate on them, but when you messing with my money, that's a different type of feeling. Like, that where it hits your gut. But he hired me. He asked me how much I was making. He gave me $5,000 on the spot to my salary. And as they say, the rest is history. So it was, I know what it feels like to go through some things and not have income, but I do know, and I'll say this, that my mother used to tell us when Black people began to march, and she said, you know, they would sick dogs on them and hit them with water hose and things like that. And they had this saying, keep your eyes on the prize, right? So, and I don't know, I'm getting emotional for some reason, I don't know. But my mother used to tell us, they used to say, no matter what happened, keep your eyes on the prize. Like, don't forget, why are you doing this? I don't know what's happening to me right now. But that's what I tried to do, is no matter what, understand why are we doing this? Like, this is why. And so, like, they were doing that for us, like, to have a right to vote and to be in school. You know, like, they were thinking, I don't care if I'm getting bit, I'm keeping my eyes on the prize. So that's how I overcame adversity, is I just keep my eyes on the prize. And I remember what my mother told me. And I apologize, I didn't mean to get all emotional. For some reason, that triggered something in me, which you asked me that question.
I want to give you a virtual hug.
No.
Gotta. Wow. Just, yeah, heart emojis. I wanted to just kind of speak on that a little, but I just feel like you need a hug.
I'll receive that.
I don't know if we can chime in, Anthony, if you want.
Oh, feel free, feel free.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, Kenyatta. And you opened up with saying, you know, you're asking a Black man to share a story of struggle. You know, like, obviously there's, that goes without saying. And I thought that was just so important that you said that, because I do feel so strongly that just being here, being who we are, just as a Black person, we come into this world with this struggle. And so I really don't have to think about examples, and I don't have to think that hard, because I can think about being 4, and I can think about first learning when, you know, Chad, you shared a story about learning, like, the first time that skin color was a thing. And For sure. I think this idea of white and Eurocentric supremacy impacts all of us. And there's a specific sort that happens here in the United States, but this is a global thing. There's colorism all around the world. And so when you grow up with this idea that your proximity to whiteness makes you a better person or more valuable, that is very difficult to shake. And so I first learned that, you know, being brown, unfortunately, I learned this awful lesson that it was a negative thing in elementary school. I was about 6, and I learned that on the playground, that if you have dark skin, that's a bad thing. But I also learned that, you know, there's this thing of also not being dark enough to be able to complain and not being light enough to be valuable. So those are some awful things that we learn as children. And I don't just think that because I'm Black, I'm the only person that experiences that. I think color struckness and colorism really impacts all of us. And so when I think about just the struggle and things that I've had to overcome, I know that, I mean, I can pull on so many different examples, but just learning that I'm valuable and believing that I have value, and it has nothing to do with what I look like, is a huge thing to have to overcome. And I think that's just a part of, I believe, the Black experience, is having to overcome that and having to get up every day and believe in your value and your worth, regardless of the world around you that sends you a very different message. And so when I think about our students, again, representation matters. And it matters that we have in our institution leaders and faculty and other students and staff that reflect our student body, because it kind of sucks to be the only Black person in the classroom. I've been there. I went to Dominican University and there were like maybe 5 Black people there in the entire like campus. I mean, it was crazy. I was bused to school as a kid. So I was taken out of my neighborhood, out of my community, to go to a different school, and there were very few Black students in my classroom. And so it just, from being a little kid, it is a struggle to just kind of unlearn some of those lessons. And I have a little one in the background making a lot of noise, so the struggle is real even today. But it's so important that she also knows, I mean, it's that she's valuable. She's brown, that's what she is. There's nothing that will change that. And that there's so much beauty in that, and that she's valuable, right? So that, like, I have to teach that lesson right now. And so I think our students experience it, our community experiences it, and it's an everyday. I feel like it's not something that I feel like maybe I've overcome it because I'm good, but it is an everyday thing for us to constantly work to unlearn that message.
You know, I just want to piggyback on that, and thank you for saying that, because I feel like a lot of time I tell my students, hey, I'm glad you in my class. And like, do you know what that'll do to a student? Like, as you said, like being the only one in the class, or what they're going through. Like, they look at Professor Weathersby as like I'm the top of the top. And so I go, hey, Jennifer, man, I'm glad you in my class. Thank you, I'm glad you in here. That changes the whole dynamic of, like, you know, so what I'm saying is sometimes we as professors, we just get so caught up in the day-to-day that, like, when a student goes, hey, Weathersby, I need to turn this in late, man, I'm going through something. I feel like just let them turn it in late. Like, let's not be so much of like, nope, you gotta do this, and it's just like so much that you forget about the person, right? Like, I remember, before the corona, they were like, the math department, we were saying if the students have an excuse for then turning in late, if they say housing, then just let them do it, because the housing was so crazy. It's still crazy, but you know, with corona, but I think it was 2 years ago where like people were just losing their homes, and like, like people couldn't find apartments. The rents was like $3,000, you know, so it was like, we had like a code where it's like, if they put anything about housing, then just let them turn it in late. Like, don't worry about it. And so I'm saying that to say that sometimes that's why you need teachers who've been through certain things that look like a student, because you can reflect. If nobody has had to move a bunch of times, then how can you teach somebody who's always moving, right? How can you relate to somebody who is going through some things? And so I think that's one of the biggest pushes why you need to have Black professors. You need to have diversity in the administration and things like that, because you have students that they're looking up to us and they're saying, Weathersby, I'm going through this, and if I just go, nope, then I'm just another math teacher that they're never gonna pass the math class. But if I say, okay, look, don't turn it in late, but I need you to have it, the quality better be there, but take a second, get yourself together. I got you. I'm glad you in my class. I'm not gonna do you like that. If it's a week late, it's just gonna be a week late, but come on in here and do what you gotta do and pick it up when you can. That changes the way they look at not only school, but at me as a professor.
And I just love that, and I love the connection you're making to the next segment that I know we're going into about, making that connection with students. How can we help our Black students on our campuses? And what you've said is parallel for administrators as well, because I think there's a way in which administrators, whether that be at the student-facing level or the non-student facing level, right? The folks who got to make sure the money is there and got to make sure that, the campus is a campus and got to make sure the programs actually run, and make sure students get their financial aid and all that good stuff, right? There's a responsibility there that we are also making students of color, making Black students feel comfortable on our campus as Black faculty, staff in the community. So I think that's an important thing. One of the things that I thoroughly appreciated, particularly when I studied out in Ohio, where you could literally count how many times a day you see a Black person, was the head bob, right? And like everything, you're like, yep, you know what's up? Like, I don't know you, but I see you, right? And I think sometimes even that very sentiment of acknowledging my presence, right? Or acknowledging that we're in community. I might not necessarily have the time or the occasion to get into this deep conversation, but that acknowledgement matters. And I think we can do more of that, like you have done in your courses. I think that's important. And it's important too that we help students to understand why that is important. Because I left Ohio, got back to New York, upstate New York at Cornell, and the head bob folks are looking at me like, who are you nodding at? Like, black folks be literally looking around like, you ain't saying hi to me, right? So I think there's a way in which we can build that community and train our students to that we also need the community. And I'm speaking from me as that person who have been in so many of my career fields where I am the only Black. I want to see the Black student, right? I want to connect with you. I want to share with you how I've navigated the space. I want to share with you how I know to navigate this space you're in, right? Because in our various roles, faculty, staff, administrator, we know some things about this space that students have to navigate that they'll never know, right? But a part of our responsibility is to be that shepherd, be that guardian, be that teammate, be that support. And that's something I think students also have the responsibility to lean into that, right? Hey, good morning, how you doing? Acknowledge the head bob, at least acknowledge the head bob. And I'm gonna stop there.
I was just going to add and kind of and move us to some of the next questions, because I know we talked about strategies for Skyline as well. And so I think what comes to mind for me, in particular for students, is that you can't be what you can't see, right? And so I have two just suggestions. I appreciate Kenyatta so much. I've been raising a scientist, right? She's going to be 18 soon, and her major is astronautical engineering. And so I've been it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I've been trying to put her around just, you know, definitely people of color who've been in STEM, because she's going to be in an isolation. So she's getting prepared for that isolation. I've been trying to prepare as much as possible, but you're not truly prepared until you're in it, right? And so she'll have to experience that. And the other day she said, well, will you come if I need you? And I said, baby, I'm always there, right? Whenever you need me. That's a given. But, and so I think of that when I think of STEM and our efforts to really diversify STEM and CTE. I think we can do, we're doing an excellent job. I mean, the division of STEM is doing excellent work. Kenyatta, you guys have as well, but what else can we do to make sure that, you know, fifth graders are aware of our program, and how do we begin really early? Since raising a scientist, I've been cultivating her world since she was a baby, you know, from geological explorer trips to, you know, mining the caves and all of these things. We've been doing so many things, but how can we make sure that experience is very similar to our students? So I'm a STEMinist at heart, and I have to give a call out to STEM, because the numbers are dismal, and it just makes me cry each day when I see the number of students of color in those fields. So we got to continue to work there. The second thing I would like to suggest, and I'll give my colleagues some chance to provide suggestions, is when I was tenured faculty at San Bernardino Valley College, we had a Black Faculty and Staff Association. We also had a Latinx association as well, and I was part of both. But my thing is, it was a useful way for us to just sort of come together and talk. And we may want to think about how we want to do that, because you don't want to sort of isolate. But I do feel that there was a sense of camaraderie in that, and ability to kind of just sort of have a space to just check in. And I do notice that we don't have that in this district. So I've talked about that before. But that could be a suggestion. I think the question was, how do we help the Black community, right? How do we help Black faculty, staff, and students and things of that nature? And I want to give a shout out to Nathan Jones, who's also talked about as well, Chad, probably with you, how do we have that space for our Umoja students? And we talked about maybe some sort of association as well. So those would be a couple of my suggestions.
Thank you so much, everyone. So we are going to go a little bit over time. So I'm just going to have one last question, and it's for everyone to respond to. How can our campus do better to celebrate and be better connected with the Black community?
I'll chime in, Anthony, and Dr. Taylor Mendoza. I feel like you really hit the nail on the head with this, and that is building community so that our students feel affirmed when they come onto our campus, and that they see themselves reflected, and they feel like this is a space that is also meant for them. And that definitely comes from engaging every aspect of the campus. And so I love that idea. I hope to help explore that idea with you in the district. But I do think we have to, you know, structurally things have to change for people to feel safe, for change to really, really be impactful.
I guess I'll chime in. I'm not afraid to say I really don't know, because I really don't. But what I do know is that whenever you need something, there's a recruitment that has to happen, right? When you look at a Jackie Robinson, he was recruited out of the Negro Leagues, right? That's my favorite. I could tell another story about me and Jackie Robinson. But when I look at athletics, right, there's a recruitment that happens, right? Even when you look at, as Dr. talked about, STEM, right, there's a recruitment that happens. And so I feel like the recruitment that happens to Skyline does not happen where the African-American population is, right? And I just really believe that, because I know even when I was in high school, City College of San Francisco, they would touch down, or what we would call, they would pound the pavement, right? They would touch the turf. So they would come up to the high schools and say, you know, this is what we had. And so that was one of the reasons why when I got out of high school, I went straight to City College. I got in the culinary program because that was what they had to offer for me. They had a great Black studies program that I still remember. So what we have to offer, we have to touch not only the peninsula, but go into San Francisco. Maybe we have to go into Oakland or whatever. Like my cousin called me and she was telling me my little cousin wants to be a mechanic. I was like, man, send them to Skyline, right? They don't even know that we have. So I'm like, okay, what we have to offer.
I can't come.
Hold on.
I can't move.
With the yes, okay. I was trying to what was I saying? But yeah, so we got I'm sorry, I just lost my
Okay, going into Oakland, not just focusing
yes,
on
right. Because what I'm saying is what we have to offer in terms of now with the cosmetology, we're second to none, right? With the automotive program, they're trying to do the barbershop. Hey, what we're doing we got the data science pathway going, and all of these great things that we have, student trustees at the boards, and all of the things that we have, Capabaya, Puente, like we got it, right? So let's go into the neighborhoods and at least say that we're here, because somebody's going to, because, and I'll say this in, it was a young man that I was real dear to when he got out of, he got in some trouble. So when he got out of trouble, we went straight to City College, and they had, and they were actively recruiting him as an African-American, like, hey, we need the guy didn't bite his tongue. He was like, we need more Blacks, and we have a biotechnology program. So we looked into biotech. They had the automotive over there. They had the carpentry thing. They had the culinary program. All of the things, when they had their open house, we went and they literally tried to grab him up, right? So I'm looking at Skyline and all the great things we have to offer. We can do the same thing.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in a little bit, kind of piggybacking on Kenyatta's point. I think it's one thing to do the recruiting, but what are you recruiting them to, right? So I'm new to Skyline, and the thing that I'm struggling with is what would attract me here if I was a Black student? And if I'm a Black student here, what's relevant in this space for me, right? And I've been struggling with some of that, trying to figure that out. And it seems like there are not a lot of very clear answers. So in tandem with the recruitment, we got to make this a place they want to be. We got to make this a place they can be and be themselves in. So I just want to briefly add that as the other side of the recruitment.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. I can open up the chat to maybe 1 or 2 questions if anyone has anything to ask. Are there any questions? Oh. All right.
Actually, Anthony, I have a question. I'm sorry, my video won't work because it's still disabled. I won't take it personally that I seem to be the only one whose video was disabled. but one of the questions I wanted to ask is regarding the question about the stress and anxiety that exists for African Americans in our society. There we go. And this is borne out in data, and I don't know how many of you are aware, but it just came out the other day that because of the pandemic, up through June 30th of 2020, not July 1st since then, we don't know what that data is, but just the pandemic up through June 30th, we've seen an overall decrease in life expectancy in the United States for 1 by 1 year for the population in general. For African Americans, that dropped 2.7 years, 2.7 years. For Hispanics, 1.9 years. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there and get the response from the panel about your feelings about that. I know what my own thoughts are as to why that is the case, but I wanted to get some feedback from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell, for that data point, that horrifying data point. It actually made me think a little bit about the last thing you said, Chad, when you were touching on creating a space for us to be ourselves. And I want people to think about that for a moment, that there are entire segments of our population, and of course our student population, that maybe feel like they can't be themselves. And this is, for many of us, our everyday existence, and the amount of stress and anxiety that might create. And so when I think about our outcomes, especially with this pandemic, I think about how amplified things that are already there are now that we are in this crazy environment that we're all in. But at the end of the day, yeah, it kind of drills down to something very human, is just us being able to show up and be who we are and feel and have that safety, and that is missing oftentimes. So just something for us to think about, and especially as we think about the data and creating spaces for our students.
Yeah, that's important, because when you said that, my son just came down and he asked me, can he go to Skyline? So like, sure, son. But I want to say that's very important that we figure that part out. The young man that I was just talking about, actually recently OD'd, and so we lost him to that. And I don't know what he was going through or what he was trying to deal with, but when you talk about equity and you talked about equality, for some people it's a matter of just going to school and getting access. For some African Americans, it's life or death, right? Like they used to have this saying, Yale or jail, meaning if you either going to college or the rest, right? So it's like at some point we have to figure out, that space and that part of that community, that village that we're talking about, or we're going to lose them to various other things. And when you lose one, then it's like a ripple effect, right? Because everybody deals with grief differently. So now you're just dealing with so many things. So I think that we have to figure something out before it's too late.
And I see Maria had a question, so I'm not sure if that.
Hi, my name is, I'm sorry, my video's not working, but my name is Maria Lara Blanco, and I'm the interim registrar at Pcyeta College. I'm sorry I came in late as well, so if this was covered, I apologize, but I came in when somebody was commenting about, we need to have, faculty, and not just faculty, but administrators that look like our students, right, especially of color. But when this whole pandemic hit, and then the George Floyd, when he got killed, I don't know, I felt like I needed to do, I was just wanted for myself, they were talking about how important it was for counseling and general counseling. And the truth of the matter is, though, if we don't have general counseling or personal counseling of color, right? Students are not going to go to them because, like you guys mentioned, they're not going to be able to relate what they're going through, correct? And so I immediately sent out an email to our human services. I just wanted to know, like, what are our numbers, right? Both in general and personal counseling, both full-time, tenure and adjunct. And that was back in June or July when I asked for this information, and I'm yet to still get it, right? I was asked, well, what do you need it for? And I just said, I just want to know. Maybe it's something that we really need to go out there and start recruiting, right? Because I think that's so important. They were mentioning you know, if a student needs assistance with food or financial aid or just anything in general, someone to talk to. But if when they go into that office, no one looks like them, they're not going to ask for help, right? So again, you know, it's the recruiting of, we need more general counselors and personal counselors of color in our district.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate your comments, Maria. And I think, yeah, I think all of us are kind of nodding our head, knowing that we definitely need to do just a better job in all areas, right? In all levels of educators. And so, and you can reach out to me. We can have a conversation if there's some data you're interested in, that maybe I can support that and giving you the information you need.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think for me, the most important thing is having some individuals you can connect with to heal. With that, it was, you know, when the George Floyd thing happened, and then we can sort of, Alvin, let us know where you want to take it, but I'll sort of say some comments. When the George Floyd thing occurred, you know, I was in the kitchen cooking, and my husband and daughter, they're in the TV. I was, what's going on? They're like, nothing, nothing. They were pretending like nothing was happening. I was like, what's wrong with you guys? And they finally told me what was going on, and they were trying to protect me. That came to me, and I'm so appreciative of that. But they just, they knew that it's hitting them, but it would hit me just like bricks, right? And so I'm in the kitchen trying to get myself together because I'm just in shock, knowing that I'm just thinking about my son, wanting to make sure that he's just okay. So. But I really appreciate this conversation. I do think we need a space as educators to heal, because it's not as business as usual. And sometimes I find that we don't have that space. And so I'm definitely appreciative of our new leader, Dr. Moreno, who really understands and really appreciates and values voices and healing, because she has allowed for that in the cabinet. And so we are modeling that as well. So we're in a good place. And we're going to do this together as a community.
I just wanted to, if I could say this real quick, I thank you for that question. And I thank you, Jennifer, for saying that, because it's almost, sometimes you can't do it all. Because I remember maybe a few years when Trayvon Martin got killed, when Mike Brown got killed. It was a summer where it was just like back to back to back. Donald Sterling, the guy in Louisiana, I think Sterling, it was just bad. And I remember walking out the house and just feeling like, what is my life worth, right? And I know I'm educated, like I know that, you know, I've accomplished some things, and I believe I'm a role model, but I just felt like, what is my life really worth, you know? And then to have my son ask me, you know, because we're trying to shelter him, and he's like, Daddy, what's the thing with black folk and police, you know? And I'm just like, okay, like I don't want to have this comment. Like, who do I call? Like, you know, I'm calling my friends is calling. We never call each other. We're always calling. Like, it was one of those things. So it's, to be able to cope with it and not have professional help, that was a big thing, you know? So I think that is something that needs to be thought out of. And also knowing that my students are asking me questions because they're looking for me to give them some relief or some type of a, you know, and I'm like, I'm not I'm just a, you know, but I know what y'all doing. Y'all asking me because you want to release, you know? So I think that, yes, having those counselors are there, and some of the counselors at Skyline, I know I'll just go and talk to Kwame, and he know what I'm doing, right? He knows that I'm just releasing, but at some point you do need to talk to somebody, not so much a guidance counselors, but like, you know, and the other counselors, if you know what I'm saying. It's very, very important for your mental health.
Thank you so much. Our last question is going to go to Mr. Stokes, and after that, we will be taking a picture.
All right, I put my camera on since you're going to be taking a picture. Excuse me if you covered it earlier and I missed it, coming from meetings as well, but I wanted to hear some of this important conversation now. And since it's time's sake, I'll pose it more of a thought versus a question that you necessarily have to answer. Seems that we have been recruiting hard for African-American students since I've been here, and it's my 6th year. And we have been more or less around the same percentage of students at the college as there is in the community, i.e. there's not a critical mass in the community. And our location doesn't make it easy for students to come either for various reasons. And we've been talking about, students being college ready and that we have to become student ready. One of the opportunities that the pandemic has opened is virtual learning, right? We didn't have a choice. About us taking degrees and programs to them. So instead of us just thinking within our walls as we open back up, if we create programs and opportunities in Oakland, let's take the education to where the population is. And we can continue to provide supports online and on virtual, but let's create satellite degrees where the critical mass is if we want to infuse our opportunities and possibilities into communities that don't have it at our institution. Take it to them. And I think I've been at other places that did things like that. I think it's highly possible. And once people start going it remotely, whether we do a virtual, whether we have a place in Oakland somewhere where they can come into, we will then create some of the change we want to see. We build the infrastructure, we take it to them and start to educate more of the masses, and we can start to replicate what we like to see so it becomes jail instead of jail. But I would like us to consider what are the possibilities for us to go there versus always asking them to come to us.
I think that's an excellent idea. And it really resonates with me because some of the work that I did for my dissertation research is around how accessible higher ed was in Jamaica. The university and the community colleges, particularly community colleges, did an excellent job. University of the West Indies, not so much. What they did was for students in rural areas or students that just could not access, they use things that were already there. So, right, there's a school out there, the school's closed from 3:30 to the following day. They actually send their programs out to those communities, right? So I think you're onto a really solid point. I'm sure there are tons of examples here as well. And I think that's definitely worth looking into, and not just looking into, but acting on.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything to say on that question? All right, so now we're gonna take our picture. Alvin's gonna be giving us the instructions on that.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for like a very, very great dialogue and discussion. I feel very full from that just because it was just so nourishing. And Kenyatta, love the emotion, brother. Like, you don't gotta apologize for that. You know what I mean? As a fellow San Franciscan, I know what she's talking about being the whole like showing emotion thing. So I got you. Don't trip. So we're gonna take a picture. I hope that y'all like fix yourself and getting ready. I am a two picture type of person, right? So if the first one doesn't work out well, you only got one more. Okay. So I do the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Oh, Lucia came in. Oh, see, everybody just wants to take a picture. That's okay. I'll do the 2 again because we got 3 more people. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, one more time. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ed.